Hey, everybody, welcome to the latest Screenshare session from Ready Set, and today with HubSpot. And Jonathan Hunt is joining us, VP of Media there. Very grateful to have you, Jonathan. Jonathan leads content at HubSpot. They have a huge growing network and ecosystem of brands and properties, the biggest of which being The Hustle, which I know many of you have read, as I do. Jonathan comes from National Geographic, Vice. He's led content at all kinds of places, which is great for us because this is content. So we know he's going to be interesting and awesome. And I've gotten to know him a bit. Welcome, Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For sure. So you just got back from Cannes. We're talking marketing, advertising, and AI. Tell me a little bit about kind of what you were hearing reverberating around Cannes in terms of AI, and then how you see AI in terms of this. I feel like I have friends on both sides. People saying, why are we doing anything, even building software? AI is going to eat the world, just give up. And other people saying, it's not ready. No one's actually using it. It's not good enough to even use now. Big place to start. But
yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. Obviously, for context for everyone that's watching, I was there for Cannes Lions, the big advertising festival that happens every single year in June in Cannes, France. And it's just a great festival for the marketing and advertising and entertainment industry to get together and just talk about what's everyone, is like that was on everyone's mind. And so this year, it was definitely all things AI, as you can imagine. And what I found in my conversations is that there's actually sort of two schools of thought right now. You definitely have the more risk-averse audience, the folks that are, still kind of dabbling in the practical use of AI. And so what you oftentimes see is they're using GPT for basic research. Or in some cases, they're sort of grappling with a lot of the like concerns around the use of AI, especially as it relates to talent. Right, both from a voice perspective, from a visual perspective. But then you also have what was interesting is like a lot of the media folks there, like the content creators that are surprisingly not as risk averse. A lot of conversations that we're having, especially with reporters, whether that were there was them actually seeing AI as being a time saver, a value add to them. And they're not as concerned as you would probably think they are. And largely because they don't think the quality from a content perspective is there yet, right? So if you are a reporter or a journalist that is writing for the New York Times, is writing for the FT, Business Insider, Hustle Media Network, right? You are really relying on voice expertise and the ability to, in some cases, call up sources, which GPT can't do right now. If you're largely sort of creating content that's based off of a lot of keywords, that's kind of more utilitarian based, then, that's where there is probably more concern, especially in the editorial world.
yeah, and then you mentioned like media and talent. This is something that comes up in our world of video ads. For those, I forgot to introduce myself. For those who don't know me, I'm John Gargiulo. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Ready Set. We're essentially a digital agency that came from creative. We work with DoorDash, Robinhood, Hims and Hers, just cranking out video ads for Instagram, Facebook, etc. And we're launching a big AI product this summer called AirPost that just automatically makes UGC ads. What's the feeling around, celebrities and talent and all those kind of folks that can, as people try to put clauses into contracts saying, can we just dub your voice and use you as an avatar?
Extreme aversion is like full stop extreme aversion. It's interesting. I was speaking with this agent from a very well-known popular talent agency, and his sort of feedback to me whenever I was asking him about the role that AI was playing within his own conversations was that anytime there's even a whiff of AI right now into contract negotiations, it gets rejected full stop, right? So, you have the prolific directors of the world that have very unique creative styles, like, think Hype Williams, Wes Anderson, et cetera, that just don't want to see kind of like C- versions of their work out there in the world. You have script writers that, want a job, and you have talent that just don't want to be misrepresented in the wrong way without their own control over it. And so, I think the consensus right now, especially in the entertainment industry, is like until you have at least alignment and agreement from the writers, the directors, the actors around the use of AI, adoption within that entertainment industry is going to be very difficult. And so I think that's why you've seen it kind of like, slog ahead without really a lot of, momentum there.
Yeah, it's very rare. I think Bruce Willis like sold his likeness in Avatar, and a few others have been sort of pioneering there, but it's very much the exception. I wanted to ask you that very big existential question around, is AI going to just replace everything we're doing? Because there's a lot of compelling arguments that can be made for that in the near term, like the next year to 5. Or no, is it just not good enough and everyone's exaggerating how fast it's going to do that? And then I want to dive in for everyone to HubSpot and like how you guys are using it now in marketing and advertising.
Yeah, I mean, is it going to take everybody's job tomorrow? No. I think, until the quality gets a lot better, I think everyone's jobs are safe. I think, especially how we're thinking about it, is more of an accelerant and an enabler for how we get work done better and faster. Again, I sort of go back to the sort of quality of the content you're producing. If you are producing deeply researched, opinionated, and sort of like value add editorial stories, videos, newsletters, like that can't be replicated right now. If you are producing a lot of like listicles or a lot of just like very utilitarian content that don't really require a unique perspective, then that's where I think you're going to see a lot of just leverage of AI to do that work on your behalf so that you can focus your folks on doing more high value, high impact work.
That's a chasm we're trying to cross with AirPost right now. Like when I say automatically generated UGC ads, most UGC video ads, it's you hear the person talking all about the product, how they like it or why they used it, the problem they were having. And AI is writing that for us. And it's pretty generic sounding, and we're trying to figure out how do you get it to be more, reverent, quirky, real and authentic. And for all, you're watching a written blog post or an ad script, it just isn't there yet, it feels.
Yeah. Look, it's getting better. I would say it's like C+, B- at best. Obviously, depending on the tool you're using, like Claude versus GPT, you get different outputs and different kind of like editorial sensibilities. But like, it's not to the level yet where it is capable of writing a hustle post, for example. And I think it's still a pretty far ways off.
Which is pretty amazing. I think if we talked 2 years ago, let's see. Yeah. I mean, months after ChatGPT came out, people were already writing blog posts. Jasper, Copy.ai were growing very quickly. It looked like, okay, that's the thing that's going to go first. And it still hasn't gone. I know there's a lot of AI content on the internet, and we can talk about Google and what they're doing and how they're thinking about AI and how folks that are interested in SEO should be thinking about AI, looking for their stuff. But it's not here yet, and it doesn't feel close. And text, you'd think, would be the first thing to happen. So it's interesting in itself to hear you say, as the guy who leads content at The Hustle, with respect, some of those posts, the hustle aside, a lot of B2B blog posts are, 10 things to do as a new VP of marketing. There's probably thousands of those. And even that, it's not quite there. Well, tell us about how you are using it at HubSpot, because I'm kind of obsessed with usefulness of AI versus hype. Yeah. So tell us where it's working for you guys.
Yeah, I would say probably the most impactful area, at least in our content production cycle, where it's bringing a lot of value is in how we think about extending the reach potential of our English content investments. So, we produce hundreds upon hundreds of pieces of content, whether it's audio, video, written editorial, in English every single month, right? And historically, the process of localizing that into different languages, whether it's German, Spanish, Italian, French, etc., it's pretty labor intensive, right? You have entire teams that are focused on that, especially when it comes to video, right? You're going through the process of basically recreating a video using local talent. It's also translated, which can add days and days and days upon the production process. And so the ability to take all that content and then effectively and efficiently internationalize it has been like a big barrier for us. Like we've done it, but I don't think to the scale that we always wanted to be able to do it. And so that's where AI has, I think, been a huge value add for us, specifically HeyGen. Like I would say, like, in terms of the best AI dubbing solutions out there, like the ones that can like really accurately lip sync and get translations to about like, let's say 90 to 95% accuracy, probably the best product out there on the market right now. And that has been a game changer for us, right?
Yeah, we've been playing with HeyGen also, and I'd love to see some stuff on this.
Yeah.
If you got a screen share for us. Synthesia was first out of the gate. I've been following them for a long time. They seem to focus more on like in-house HR videos and things like that. But HeyGen's just been foisting ahead and raising a lot of money. But yeah, show us a little bit about what you're talking about.
Yeah. And the thing that I'll caveat with all these tools is that if you were to just like use HeyGen, train it up, and have it translate something without proper QA and proper like copy editing, you probably wouldn't want to put that out into the world. Like you do want that extra sort of like quality control step before you go from production to publish. And so that's always been a big part of our process to ensure just, whatever we put out into the world is factually correct, is saying the right thing, and is up to the standards of our local markets.
Which I've got to say, if I'm being honest, like at your scale, it's still better to like click a button and be in 100 languages. But if a QA person has to like listen to a thing and make sure it's right, you could imagine the same amount of time they could write it. But this is exactly what we're talking about here. It's like, where's the value leap? And so that's why I'm excited for you to share some stuff, because I think you guys have made the leap.
Yeah, so let me pull up a couple of just like cherry-picked slides. So, before we started to scale the use of HeyGen, obviously the thing that you do is you experiment with it and really just kind of like test and learn to make sure, like, is this the right solution for us? And so, we, our kind of thesis was like, we have this ability to really enhance the global impact, the visibility, and then demand generation for English video investments by really just rethinking how we approach localization of our English first video strategy to the rest of the world. And so the thing we started with was, what is probably our largest audience opportunity, and that being the Spanish speaking markets. So the idea here is, we wanted to sort of have a control. So what would it look like to take a video and localize it as we have historically, which is the process of us recording a video, transcribing it, providing those transcriptions to a local translator, having them translate it, package it up, reproduce it, and then publish it, right? Versus using HeyGen, testing up HeyGen, having it trained up on the actor, having it translate the video content, and then having it be QA by someone local in our market. And so historically, the thing that you've seen is like, it would take anywhere from, let's say, 10 days to 3 weeks for us to produce like an 8-minute video. And this isn't just like a text on screen video or like a sort of like a screen share. This is like us like on set, out in the field, like from conception to pre-production to production to post, all the way to publish.
There's no number of meetings and Zooms on this, but it's probably more than zero.
Yeah, it's definitely more than zero, but like a lot of thought and creativity goes into this, right? But then for us to be able to take that same video and then localize it, so you're transcribing it, you're re-scripting it, you're filming it, you're editing it, and by the time you're done, like that's another 10 days, right? To use something like HeyGen, for example, you're training it, translating it, you're doing like some light QA, you're just making tweaks to the edit just to make sure like everything tracks, and then that's usually 1 to 2 days. So you're saving a lot of time and human capital. And then, whenever we actually look at the results of that, with these early pilots, the thing that we saw is, by and large, whenever you look at our AI dub video strategy, we're seeing a pretty decent conversion rate on a per video basis compared to videos that are localized by our local markets, right? And so you're seeing more video views. The conversion rate is a little less, but whenever you're getting more scale, the conversion rate actually I think nets out to something that is pretty meaningful from a demand.
This looks like a snippet too, a sample of like 3 videos, probably a 300.
It's a very small. Yeah, it's exactly. It's like it's a very small snippet, and it's from a very limited time frame, right? And so as we've been able to scale this, we're cutting down on production time. We're able to push out more content, generate more viewership, and obviously generate more leads in international markets like our German-speaking market and our Spanish-speaking markets.
Awesome. By any chance, do you have a video so we could see? I want to see how good the lip syncing.
Yeah, exactly. So let me pull this up. So the video I'm about to show, this is originally produced, created in English from an English-speaking actor, and then here is the result after using agents. Let me just do this.
¿Sabías que las personas retienen el 10% de lo que escuchan, el 20% de lo que leen y el 80% de lo que ven? ¿Sabías que nuestros ojos registran 36,000 mensajes visuales por hora? ¿Por qué estos datos para ti? Dado que el 93% de la comunicación es visual, hice este video para compartir el poder del marketing visual en los negocios.
So, my Spanish is definitely college level Spanish, and I have not been in college in a very long time. But I'm told by our local native speakers that we get to about a 90 to 95% accuracy, right?
Walk us through what we're looking at here for the uninitiated. Someone asked in the chat, step 0 to 10. Just whip us through when you talk about hey Jen, avatar, does she speak Spanish? The lips, the hands, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so basically you're taking the original source video, which is recorded in English. You are ingesting it into HeyGen along with the transcript. You are training up HeyGen on the actor, the movement of their voice, their hands, etc. After about, let's say, a couple of minutes, it gets trained up well enough to be able to match the translated words in her voice to her lips, so that whenever you're watching it, occasionally you can see it not hit the mark, but most of the time you can't really notice. And then
especially if you're not looking for it. We're all watching this for mistakes. Most people just flick it on for 10 seconds.
Yeah, here's the thing: dubbing has been happening in popular entertainment for decades, right? So I think we're all so used to it that we don't actively try to find it or look for it. And so unless someone says, "Hey, John, this is AI dubbed and lip synced," you wouldn't really know the difference.
Yep. And I just want to touch on, because you brought up at Cannes this being a concern, and you're at a big public company, with the talent themselves, are they cool with this generally? Is the company cool with it? The platforms right now are struggling with, do we have to label this video is AI generated content? What's the vibe over there with that?
Yeah, I think best practices definitely disclose, especially when there is AI being used within the production of editorial content, video content. Again, I think there's just so much, there's a lack of, I think, just education around AI, and maybe lack of trust almost, especially for people that aren't necessarily using it as much as we probably are on a day-to-day basis. And so disclosing up front, I think, helps establish trust, especially with the consumer. When it comes to the actual talent themselves, again, there's an education curve. I think, you hear dubbing, you hear AI, and maybe you think deep fake, or you think something a bit more nefarious. And that's never the intent, especially with our own content strategy. We see the role of something like HeyGen as being an opportunity to extend the visibility of our talent, to be able to extend the impact of our editorial creation, to just, help and service more audiences that probably want to know more about this information that just don't really have access to it because there's a language barrier right now. So that's how we sort of see.
Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. I think it makes a lot of sense. It makes it much more accessible.
Yeah.
I can compare it to a lot of things. I want to ask you about Google and AI and search generative experiences, everything that's happening over there, the little snippets that are coming up on our screens. Should we be worried if we're trying to build an SEO strategy? Before I do that, I'm going to share a few quotes that I was going to share earlier in the call. Let me go big here. So this I thought was interesting. So Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, said, "I think it's important to understand and think about GPT-4 as a tool, not a creature. GPT-4 and other systems like it are good at doing tasks, not jobs. Tasks, not jobs. I thought that was pretty interesting. Then he zoomed in on marketing and advertising. He rarely speaks about a certain industry specifically, but someone had asked him on some podcast and people dug up this quote. 95% of what marketers use agencies, strategists, and creative professionals for today will easily, nearly instantly, and at almost no cost be handled by the AI. Now, we all know founders, CEOs can be hyperbolic, and maybe this is, but we don't know if he's talking about 2 years from now or 20. Yeah, I thought that was pretty thought-provoking. And then lastly, Satya Nadella, AI is not about replacing humans, but about augmenting human capability and capacity. AI cannot replace human qualities like creativity, empathy, and judgment. At a simple level, I mean, this reminds me of what you were saying earlier around writing a compelling blog post with a hooky headline. Any thoughts on these three quotes before I go to some other stuff, and then we'll talk Google?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about all these quotes is the word choices that they're using, and it almost seems like an exercise in disarming maybe mistrust in the use of AI, like in that previous quote about sort of like AI being a tool, not a creature, like creature also being a human in that case. And then if you go,
right, exactly.
The operative word here is just like AI is not going to replace humans in the sense that humans have, a human experience and a point of view that just can't be replicated by AI, and a brand sensibility yet, right? To be able to imitate something like, a Kara Swisher calling up a source and writing a great New York Times story. Like
calling up a source and also building the relationship with that source so that they'll
building the relationship again, like having that human perspective to be able to contextualize the story in a way that can connect with other human beings. Again, like it doesn't have that yet. Like, can it sort of like learn through proxies? Like potentially, but it's not there yet. And there are.
It will be very creepy if it does get that, because I don't know if you remember the Google CEO on stage. Not that like kind of long ago, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, which is long in this time frame, having the AI or Google call the like pizza place to put in the order. And then they found out later it was very like helped along. But you could imagine a theoretical reporter in our lifetimes, I don't know, calling around. It's kind of scary. I dove in, this will be a good segue to Google. So I dove in to kind of how it writes copy, and like you mentioned earlier, it could never write, or not never, but it can't right now anyway, write a hustle blog post. And you guys have, tons of SEO juice and have just built something really great. So I can't wait to talk about that. So I'll put this in front of all of you. When folks talk about can AI be creative or not, these are 4 different headlines. The question as you read through them is, which are real and which were written by AI? I'll give you a second. And the answer is all of them were written by AI. And when I read this story, it was a screenwriter who said, I'm nervous for my job writing comedies because these are actually funny. I am very skeptical of AI stories, like the Google thing's an example of calling the pizza place. So I actually went into ChatGPT for this screen share and asked it, just write me a bunch of headlines, write me 5 headlines that sound like The Onion. And I have to say, like these, well, y'all be the judge. So I thought these were pretty funny, like especially 1 and 3 are, made me smile at least, maybe because I'm a dad. And actually, let me share another tab here for us. I pulled up The Onion, and I used to love The Onion, so this is just my own peccadillo, but I don't know, maybe this is a very subjective thing I'm talking about here, but I have to say, I did not think these were like the funniest things ever. So these are real Onion headlines here. So are they better? Not really. This is to me the exception, in that I don't find it, that's why I double checked it. And maybe the Onion just has such a specific style and it's so weird and hallucinating anyway, that AI can somehow do a decent job of doing these. But in general, I find it doesn't, AI does not do a great job actually being interesting and funny and human. So I asked it, let's try to write a hustle headline. So I cut and pasted a screenshot of like the last 12 or 15 hustle posts that you guys have done at HubSpot and said, give me 10 ideas for headlines, for stories. And this is what it came up with. And then I actually had it write a post. But I want to pause here and get your take as you read these. And these are just headlines, and ideally they should be easier, quote unquote, for AI to nail. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they kind of just lack a bit of soul. Like I think the thing that's really great about hustle headlines is that they're irreverent, they're really clickable, and maybe I'm a little partial, but I probably wouldn't click on these. It definitely feels like a B minus. It's something that you would almost expect from like a BCG or a Bain, like writing a story about like power of social media, trying to appeal to like audiences that are already sold into the power of social media. And
when's the last time in a conversation with a friend you've mentioned advanced strategies for business growth?
I know. Yeah. And if I did, they probably wouldn't be my friends anymore. So
they would be your friends. Or I always think of the Truman Show moment where he looks around and goes, "Who are you talking to?"
But yeah, I mean, I just I think some tools are better at writing headlines than others. Like I would say Claude's better than GPT in my experience, and sort of like
Claude's an underdog.
And just like coming up with better headlines. But yeah, I mean, they definitely don't feel like hustle headlines, but I could see a world where, like, depending on your content strategy, these might be relevant to you.
They might, and I will say, I think the biggest mistake most people, and I did in this case, make with talking with ChatGPT is not following up. This would be like asking, turning to your proverbial desk mate and saying, "Hey, you got 10 headline ideas for the hustle?" And maybe they'd come up with these because they're tired and we're out all night. And if you're like, "Well, these aren't punchy and hooky and don't feel like us," then you write back to ChatGPT in this case and say that, and then say try again and shape it, which takes a little more work, but I think is worth doing. I still don't think it would have gotten there if I did this. So I had it write this post, how AI in marketing, which we're talking about today, how artificial intelligence is shaping consumer behavior. And you don't even have to read it to just see all the big words. Again, I could have told it no words over 7 letters and make it snappier. I gave it a hustle post and said, generally follow the structure, tone of this post, and talk about this subject. Any thoughts on what you see here? I know you live this stuff every day with hustle.
Yeah. Again, I'm sure it serves a purpose. Like if you're looking for a primer on AI and like you woke up today not knowing what AI is, like I think this might be helpful in that regard, but definitely isn't like the editorial sensibility of the hustle isn't like irreverent. It doesn't have like the entertainment value that I think you would probably expect from a hustle article. AI
is rarely entertaining. Like I don't know, I'll speak for myself, but I rarely see something AI wrote and am entertained.
And look, I'm not me. And I don't want to be reductive to like a lot of the things that are coming out, because I think there are some really like interesting things that AI is producing right now. I just think in that example, it's like, if your strategy is for whatever reason SEO today, like that would be a good output, right? Because I feel like you could probably give it a lot of keywords and say, hey, write this primer on like AI, and it would do it, and that would be the output. Yep. But this like less so, I think.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm showing, just I keep talking about the hustle, and I haven't brought it up in this screen share. This is it. And yes, none of those headlines said fine dining for fur babies, human grade pet food is on the rise. So totally with you. Let's talk about Google. What is changing? If I'm a marketer trying to make sure I'm being loud out there on Google and making sure people can find me, and maybe building a more complex SEO strategy, you've been doing this a long time. What is changing with Google?
Yeah, look, I mean, my very first job out of college was SEO copywriting. And so like, I think that has a place in my heart as like a former SEO and someone that's kept up to date on all the changes within the world of search engine optimization. And I think I would say the last year and a half, 2 years of SEO has been a complete disruption to what the previous 2 decades of SEO were, in that the playbook has been completely rewritten. The rules of what works versus what don't are not what they used to be at all. And some of it is actually outside of the SEO's control. Like in the past, you could do a lot in terms of optimization, both technical and within the writing itself, to be able to, receive better, page ranking, indexing, et cetera. Now what's happened is that Google has rolled out a couple of new technologies and standards that are really changing the game. And, two in particular are Google SGE, which, for those who aren't familiar, that's search generated experience. And so if you are searching for something on Google right now, sometimes your result might come up as like this yellow box called Overview AI. And that is basically Google's attempt to provide more value to you by, reducing the need for you to go and click on a bunch of links by providing you the answer there without having to go deep within the scrolling experience. And so, as you can imagine, the thing that's done to a lot of publishers is if Google, which is, the most dominant search engine by miles, if that's driving 20 to 30% of your traffic, and now Google is serving up automated responses based on your content and doesn't require the consumer to go to your website, then you aren't getting that traffic. If you aren't getting that traffic, then you aren't getting the ad revenue, and you can sort of understand like the detrimental effects of that.
So very simple question. I could guess the answer, but should any of us care about, and even if, I don't know if we could know how to do it, getting Google to pick our answer or a summary of our webpage for those high-level quotes? Because some of those are pretty big. It's like, what's the first thing, what is a sales ops team? And there's a lot of B2B companies in that world that would love their thing to be the summary, I think, or maybe it's useless if it doesn't show your page.
No, it's it's useful in that it's still above the fold whenever you get your result, right? And oftentimes it is linking off to source material. So if you do want to go deeper because that paragraph isn't enough for you, then your instinct is to then click on that link. So you still get the traffic. It's just one extra step removed from what it historically was. And sometimes that extra step is the difference between someone deciding to go to a site versus not. I'd also say
extra step, but I don't know about me. I mean, for me personally, Jonathan, I think it does show the source of that thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever once clicked, because it gives you the answer usually, right? So, I mean, maybe my searches are more basic, but like, I don't know, are people actually saying, oh, that's a great summary, like, let me go to that webpage?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for something that isn't a summary, then 100% you would. So, for example, like if you're looking for how to cook like that omelet, right? Like it's not going to give you the full recipe in detail and show you like all the ingredients. Like, you sort of need that additional context. Otherwise, your omelet's going to taste terrible. So you'll probably click on that link to be able to go deeper. But you're right. In some cases, like, as I've sort of talked to folks that aren't in SEO, that are using Overview more and more, like it is the difference between them going deeper to a page versus them just getting the information there and taking it at face value.
It definitely feels that way. And then tell me about like Eat and just generally folks in this call, again, that want to be found more. How should they be thinking differently now?
Yeah. So Eat, which is EAT, which is, sorry, I wish the acronym for like, how you need to be creating content today to be a lot more discoverable by Google. Eat is like a set of standards by which Google now expects you to create content, right? So historically, what you would do is you would do a lot of SEO TAM, so like your total addressable market, to understand, like what are the keywords worth going for that maybe aren't as competitive but have the largest audience potential, and you would create content based on those keywords that might be 500 to 800 words. It really varies. And then the hope would then be like over time, Google would index that, prioritize it, and you would be one of the first 10 search results whenever someone searches for how to cook an omelet, to use that example again. That's not necessarily a great user experience in the eyes of Google because you have a lot of people playing that same game. And so you have a lot of questionable sources doing the same thing just to generate traffic and generate ad revenue. And maybe sometimes they aren't reliable sources, and it's not necessarily a value add to the consumer. And so what Google has rolled out over the last couple of years increasingly is like, how can we improve the quality of what content creators on the web are producing? And that's where they roll out this sort of guideline, which is, we want content that is coming from subject matter experts, like known subject matter experts that have lived experiences. We want it to be authoritative, to have a unique point of view, and we want it to be from a reputable source. And oftentimes we want it to go very deep. And so instead of creating content that's 500, 800 words, like we want it to be 1,500 words, 2,000 words, like we want actual depth. And the thinking there is like, if we can provide more value to the consumer and serve them up stuff that actually like brings better entertainment, better inspiration, better education to their lives, then imaginably they will come back and use Google more and go deeper into the search experience. And so
should folks on this call think, okay, I got to stop pumping out those lists and, kind of quick hits and spend a lot of time finding a really good writer and do more deep pieces? Is that how you're thinking about it?
Yeah. I mean, that's 100% it. Like if your strategy for SEO is what SEO was a year ago, where again, it's like, you'll use SEMrush, you'll find a couple keywords, you'll produce content off of it, and then you'll like go into the next thing. If that's still your content strategy, then you're gonna have a really hard time kind of like navigating the SERPs. If you are taking this like approach where you're working with known experts, known authorities in their fields, and they are creating deeper, more value-add content, both like depth in terms of like the actual substance, but also the length of the content, then you'll be in a much better position. And, look, as a publisher and someone that's been in media for a really long time, like search makes up anywhere from 30 to 40, sometimes 50 and upwards % of someone's traffic. And a lot of that has been driven by this sort of like tried and true approach to SEO content. A lot of publishers are seeing a pretty significant impact from a lack of applying EAT to their content strategies, but also SGE. And, I think one school of thought would be like, oh, this is really bad. Like it's cutting into my traffic. It is cutting into my revenue, which is all true for a lot of publishers. I think my point of view is like, I think this is actually a good thing in that it is causing content creators to really think hard about the value they're bringing consumers. And what it's starting to favor is the things that you can't find anywhere else, right? Like the things that the New York Times is producing, or the Wall Street Journal is producing, or the FT is producing, the thing that independent creators are producing, the thing that you find from like, again, lived experiences through Reddit posts and comments and communities there, and the things that like we're producing a lot of now as well.
I love it that you're looking at it in a positive way. And I think it's actually an inspiring thing for everybody to go and figure out how to just make great content that's deep, and you lean into your expertise. And, I'm a big fan of tentpole content where it's harder and it might take a month or two, but it can just do you well for a really long time. I want to ask you about volume versus quality in a second. So you mostly just may have answered this, but when people say, oh, great, like AI can write that blog post I showed you earlier, the internet is about to just turn into millions and millions of, what time does the Super Bowl start SEO'd stuff, because it takes one click. I mean, I've watched YouTube clips where a guy sets up a Google Sheet, links it through LangChain to, ChatGPT, and just writes 5,000 blog posts and hits publish. Are you not worried about things going in that direction?
You are starting to see examples of people using AI for nefarious use cases where they are basically like scraping websites and recreating that content and getting ranked in Google. But I think Google's getting smarter about sniffing that out and deprioritizing people that are playing that kind of game where they are trying to game the system. Google's a pretty intelligent resource, and it takes into considerations thousands upon thousands of different signals to determine like what is actually authoritative and what gets elevated to people's SERPs, right? There's a world where that could have been an issue, and it still is an issue, but I think it was getting better about that. I think like there always will be a need for GPT, for example, writing like foundational first drafts of content that need a human to punch it up and to QA it and to make sure that, again, it's bringing like unique perspective that we know is important from a value add perspective, but is also important in the eyes of Google. Otherwise, again, like what's the point of even doing it in the first place if it's not going to get ranked or if people don't actually derive value from it? I think people are getting smarter about its use case, and Google is also getting smarter about whether or not something is like a very sort of like basic AI post that deserves people's time versus things that aren't.
I think this comes back to the conversation around quality. It's like, everything you just said sounds right to me, and it's all based on the premise that the stuff's just not very good. I guess, do you see it getting good enough? You mentioned B-, C+ right now. That's not stuff you put out as head of content. Do you see it getting to A? And if so, does everything change?
I think it will get to A, but not for the kind of content that I think, again, a lot of these like media companies that I just listed probably generate the most value from, right? Again, because you really do need human experience. You need the ability to develop relationships with sources, interview people, make sense of those interviews, connect with your audience on a very human and personal level that, again, AI can't really do right now. I do see the quality.
If you wrote a post, you might say, I just got back from Cannes. I met an agent of a famous actress who told me the story about these clauses. Like, it's probably not going to do that, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to do that, because then it's like, okay, what was that conversation about? And then I would have to continue to feed it that. And then I'm sure it could like hack together like something passable, but it's not something that I think we would ever publish yet, right? And so I think,
and I meant more generative. Like, it can't. You can tell that story because you're a human who was just in France.
No, exactly.
Like, it can't just make that up. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it could hallucinate and make it up, but it all comes back to this idea of like lived experience, right? Like that was my personal experience in a conversation that I had at Cannes that no one else had in the way that I had it, and so it's really up to me to be able to translate that into editorial form, or to at least provide GPT all the different inputs to be able to do that itself. But again, it can't really do that right now. If it's more like service-driven utilitarian content, again, like the stuff that we know is maybe being a bit deprioritized in the eyes of Google, but still provides value to people, right? Because people do want to learn, again, just to overuse that example, to create an omelet, right? Or to learn how to use GPT or to code their first website. Like, sure, you could definitely do that.
Yeah, I am fascinated by this question. So I hear you. I think that's right. Like, even today, it can say, like, look, if you want to make an omelet, you just got to college. Like, here's the 6 steps. You can't mess it up. But it might not be able to talk about what they learned at Cannes about AI. And there's a lot there. I'm fascinated by this whole question because I personally believe it's a binary quality thing. And it's interesting that you say it'll get to A. And of course, it's almost academic to talk about will or won't it, because it's when. Is it when we're 80? Is it in 8 months? But until it's good at what it does, until, it can turn in its work, and the person, who's got to be on the hook at that company for that work, whatever it may be, can feel really comfortable and excited to put it out. I think it's like nothing's anywhere. But the moment that happens, everything's everywhere.
Look, I mean, this is what the entertainment industry said about digital video like 15 years ago. They're like, it's just like a bunch of people on webcams producing like C- work. It'll never end. Like, look at it today. I mean, Issa Rae, YouTube creator, now one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, right? You look at Hot Ones, like amazing IP that's transcended digital video and had its own linear extension. Like, the stuff's going to get good. It's just, to your point, a matter of when.
It's a matter of when. It's like exciting and scary at the same time. I'm reading Kara Swisher's book right now, and she talks about the YouTube guys. I was just reading last night the chapter on, she's hosting a panel at Sundance in like 2007 or 2009 with Reed Hastings, Chad Hurley from YouTube, which I guess had just been bought by Google. I remember that acquisition. A lot of people were like, whoa, you paid what? Like, and it was like $1 billion or something. And she points out that they did like 28 billion in revenue from Google last year. And some other person like that. And they put it in some dank basement. They're like, ugh. And the crowd was very unfriendly. And that was the vibe, which is like, hey, this stuff is, cranky looking now, janky looking now, but it's going to be everything. And no one in the room wanted to believe it.
There's
a great scene where Chad Hurley is excited to meet George Lucas, and George Lucas comes into some green room, and she introduced him. Hey, this is the YouTube guy, and he just says, "You are ruining creativity." And like, there was just this big. He says a mean 2 sentences and walks away. There was just this big anti. Hey, this is the silver screen. It's romantic. We build this work. It's our human, emotions on the screen, and you're showing a bunch of cat videos and people are clicking on it. And I mean, that's a debate people are still having today. But, it's the same thing with AI. It's so interesting.
I agree.
Amazing. Tell me about this report you guys are putting out. Leak us some stuff. I know you guys are working on something around sort of what HubSpot's seeing with AI. I've been following HubSpot content, by the way, since the Dan Zarella. I remember being on a webinar in 2012, and I just gotten into tech where it was the biggest webinar ever. They got more people than fit in Madison Square Garden to watch, which was a big deal. And it was called, "What time is best to post on Twitter?" or something like that. And he had all this data. But tell me what you guys are up to now when it comes to AI predictions.
Yeah. So thanks for the setup. We have a forthcoming report on just like the role of AI in marketing. And I'll share a couple of big takeaways, but I definitely encourage folks to check it out once it drops. And so, every year, every year we publish a number of different like state ofs, whether it's like the state of marketing, the state of social, and we refresh it every year because obviously things change so dramatically within each of those fields. And we've been doing this for AI now, and we'll continue to do it. But, I would survey, I worked with like 1,000 plus folks within the marketing industry and the AI industry, from different levels of profession to different levels of seniority to understand, what is the role that AI is currently playing within their, standard, daily, sort of like business use. What are the things that are?
And Jonathan, if you could view and hit slideshow.
Sorry.
I want to see this in all its full glory.
Yeah. What are the things that you're optimistic about? What are the things you're concerned about? And like, what do you see in terms of the future use of AI? And some of this won't necessarily be revelatory, but some I think it's actually pretty interesting, which is, there's been a pretty significant jump of just people's use of AI within their daily strategies or like to support back end ops, right? So whenever we did this same survey last year, roughly half the folks were like, yeah, I use it on a day-to-day basis. We're now seeing roughly 3/4 of the respondents say that they at least use one type of AI. And again, this can be AI in the sense that we were talking about earlier for Hey Jin. It can be AI in the sense that, they're doing note-taking, they're doing transcriptions, they're using generative AI for creative for blog posts. It really runs the gamut. And, when you download this report, you'll see more of the use cases represented there. It's serving multiple purposes for marketers. So the top 3 use cases we saw in our survey is marketers are using it for content creation, research, and brainstorming, and in that order, right? And so, again, content creation here is not like marketers using it like what you see in the Sora examples. One, it's not accessible to a very large audience yet, but at the same time, they are using it in sort of the more generative art sense of the term, right? They're using it for research, as we were discussing a little earlier. So historically, research taking hours and hours. Now I can type in a couple of prompts, refine those prompts, and get what I need back in seconds.
That makes sense to me. Definitely research. It's so much faster and easier. Just play with ChatGPT. You mentioned art. So I'm a skeptic on that. Every time someone posts on LinkedIn, we're using Midjourney for ads. It's so good. Look at this. Well, they don't not look at this. I say in the comments, hey, this sounds awesome. Can you link us to an ad or an example of the work? And no one's written me back yet. Are people talking about art creation? What does that mean? Was there any proof of that?
Yeah. So in the art sense, it's more like them using it for lead images for blog posts or maybe
that is a thing for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of art. They're not using it to replace
not Facebook ads.
$100,000 on-set photo shoots or anything like that. They're not doing that right now. So again, I'd say it's a lot more experimentation right now rather than it being fully deployed across their entire marketing cycle. And then brainstorming, which we use it a lot for, which is hey, what are 10 headline ideas? Maybe one will be good, and then we'll punch it up ourselves, or what are different blog, just thinking of different ways of sort of creating inspiration for you to jump off from. And so that's how a lot of the marketers have been using it, as well as another resource to be able to bounce ideas off of.
I think that's great.
Yeah, and so obviously there's still some concerns around the use.
By the way, sorry, one thing on the ideas that's shocked me, just for everybody, it is incredible at brainstorming, especially if you use that word. If you say, and I've done this, strategically our company is facing this roadblock. Here's what we do. Here's the roadblock, and just talk to it like you're talking to some, mentor of yours who really understands your space, whatever it is. Or, as a marketer, here's this problem I'm running into. I don't know. How can AI help me? ChatGPT do anything here? Give me 10 ideas of how I can break through in this way that I'm trying to do with SEO, whatever. Yeah. And it will give you like 10 ideas, and 2 or 3 of them will be compelling. You'll go, huh, those are interesting. Tell me more about number 3. How would I do that? Give me 5 steps. Like it is really helpful to brainstorm. Stan Altman talked a long while about, people thought it was going to replace the most rote stuff first, and it's actually replacing some of that really brainstorming stuff first. So that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, look, in this world too, where like we're not all in the same office together, being able to turn to a GPT prompt and ask these questions, can be really helpful. And oftentimes it's taking a very kind of like sober and pragmatic approach to your answer, which is always really helpful, especially because we are all humans, and sometimes we aren't the most pragmatic or sober about sort of like rationalizing questions and ideas and concerns and prompts that we have. And so it's really helpful with that. Of course, there is this sort of like cloud of a concern around the role that AI plays in terms of like career trajectory and job replacement. And again, I think, yes, there are these sort of like rote tasks or these kind of like things that maybe can be done quicker. But I think it also comes down to like education and upskilling, like sometimes reskilling. So like, like the less that we talk about the actual use cases and how we plan on using these products, the more I think people spin up their own narratives around the misuse of those tools and products. Yeah. And again, like we're human beings, like of course we're going to go toward that area for our own preservation. And so I think like a lot of education can help solve for that. And at the same time, some of the most successful marketers today are the ones that, I believe are saying, okay, like how can I just use AI to like do more faster and better? Like even if my job, for example, is like transcribing and translating the content, it's like, great, I can do more of that now. I can do it more. I can do it faster. Opposed to
it's back to what Sam Altman said. It does tasks. It's not some creature who's sitting in your chair. Yeah, it's funny. It's interesting you say like in the vacuum of use cases, people go to the negative. I mean, there's definitely some potential downsides, big and small, around AI. Also reading last night, coincidentally, in that Kara Swisher book about what she said she really appreciated about Steve Jobs or something he said, which is that what everyone around the room is going to do inevitably at a meeting about some crazy new idea is come up with all the problems with it. Like if you're smart and someone's proposing something that doesn't exist and you're just, it's much easier to be like, well, clearly, like, how would that work? Than to be enthusiastic and say, hey, what if we did this? What if we did that? And he was very good at getting people to keep their eye on the vision and what could be good about it. But yeah, I mean, there's a sobering side also. Yeah. I wanted to answer Paul's question in the chat around, are there AI tools that exist that can watch and analyze video ads? It's a great question. It's something I've actually been watching extremely closely for a while. There are people that would disagree with me on this, Paul, but I'm a bit of a skeptic with an asterisk. So the short answer is no. You cannot there's like lots of startups that say they do this on their website. So, in the last couple of years, but you cannot feed 10 Facebook ads you got running and say, analyze these, look at the stats, tell me what's working, and optimize. Like, again, there are a lot of people selling that. I don't believe any of them are doing anything for various reasons I could talk about for a long time. Mainly because analyzing stuff with AI, which is a huge part of AirPost, we have 300,000 pieces of footage we have to analyze to put in there, has been historically really, really hard. A lot of tools have let you analyze video by saying dog, hand, woman, walk, but not at any kind of bigger level until, here's the asterisk, and this just came out, and we've been doing a lot of experimentation with it. Gemini 1.5 from Google. So this was new. This blew my mind, and this is going to spread, and the other models will probably pick this up soon. So this is a 44-minute movie by Buster Keaton, and I won't show you video clips and stuff, but it's pretty impressive if you want to go look it up. tell me some information from the piece of paper that is removed from the person's pocket and the time code of that moment. And the model said, the piece of paper removed from so he's picking his pocket there. The piece of the paper removed from the person's pocket is a pawn ticket, because then it cuts to this shot. A pawn ticket from blah, 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 located at this web, at this address, shows that a watch and chain were paid for this thing. And then you could ask it like, why does that matter that he was able to steal this piece of paper and look at it? And it'll explain, because it's like actually understanding what's going on. The actions have always been really hard. Like up till now, it's again, mostly man, black and white, two people, etc. So I think we're at the beginning of the answer to your question being a yes, but not there yet. Anything we haven't covered, Jonathan, that you want to chat about in our last few minutes here?
No, I mean, I would just say, like, just to sort of tack on to what you were describing a second ago about the Steve Jobs analogy from Kara's book, like I think just like staying intellectually curious and looking for the positives of anything. I mean, at least that's always been my MO, has always been like leaning in and not saying no instinctually or like instinctively, but always looking for a reason to say yes to something. Like, I think it's like a really great way to approach the use of AI. And like, of course, there's going to be like bad actors and misuse. And I think as long as like you aren't one of those bad actors and you don't have bad intentions for its use, but rather you're looking for a way to use AI to extend the shelf life of a content investment, expose more people to your brand, to your talent, make it more accessible to more audiences that don't speak English, right? Like the ways that we're doing it, like I think like you have the ability to really transform your entire content marketing operation overnight, potentially.
I think it's inevitable. I agree. And I think it's inevitable content marketing will get turned upside down over the next 5 time-wise, we don't know. Lastly, and you just alluded to it a little bit, what's next for you guys in terms of using AI? You're doing an awesome job, making video for people and making things more accessible. If we're chatting in a year or two, what do you imagine HubSpot will be working on?
Yeah, I mean, the integration of AI across our entire product suite is something that I think is just like completely next level.
I see Dharmesh talking about it on Twitter every day.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously he'll do a much better job at explaining the functionality than I will. But its ability to do something as simple as taking a note you want to sell a potential prospect and optimizing it in a way that it thinks it will better appeal to that prospect in the interest of converting them into a customer or a renewal. Generative art based on prompts, reversioning content from one format to another, so that again, you're not going through the motions of having to like spend so much time and effort creating bespoke pieces of content around one core idea. It automates a lot of it, and it will only continue to make your job like better, faster, easier. And so that's really the goal of all of that, and something that we're going to continue to lead into.
That's awesome. You guys are a really fun company to watch. And that's a great place to end. I'm the same way. Like, I'm very optimistic and enthusiastic, and it's just super cool to be living in this time. Frankly, I was jealous of you read Malcolm Gladwell's book, was it Blinker, about the timing. Well, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, were at the right age, at the right time, the revolution of computing, and then cloud, and then mobile. And this is maybe the biggest one. Even Bill Gates says that, and very exciting time. Thank you for doing a screen share with us, Jonathan. This was super fun. I learned a lot.
Really fun.
Awesome. All right. Keep in touch.
All right. Bye.